Hello, Americans. Think of us as a species body of volume because this is the science I'm using your name as. So I'm using your name where it was assigned by nature itself, the identity of that revealed how even fish have two eyes. They have quality aspects in nature that we like humanity's species body. Nature communicates with how. It shows us the hyper invisible, comes with the invisible but so still discernible. That comes with all parts, as all parts of English grammar, for example. Hey Jay, hi, how are you? Hello. So this video, I linked other video. I mentioned other videos in the description, like so, for example, Judge Napolitano was a per his own description. I don't know him personally. He was a New Jersey probate or not probate. I believe a Superior Court judge. And when he first had did that, he had 400 arraignments in one day, for example. Where and how nature and our founders, like James Madison, James Madison was mentioned in the video and other videos by the YouTube channel of Judging Freedom. He has intelligence sources, foreign, domestic. Where and how, our founders left us, founders of foreign countries still left them to demonstrate exactly this. What everyone agrees about is that name A through Z are being and haven't been used by the systems since semi-ancient times. Tactical terrier from the one that causes positive value nature progressions, acts in nature. For example, the suburbs were designed before our founders were born, with slavery entrenched North America and northern colonies and southern colonies, and the respective countries that this was filtered through, where how it was being sustained against Native Americans, where even the idea of making a unity, president/chief. There are proofs that there are Native Americans that allied willingly with our founders to counter extort the other founders and the other Native Americans, because everyone was forced to react or not react, or the difference of that is all in the breaching method needs to keep employed as it employed too. Now, everything that nature demonstrates about itself blamed on other things, others, and are blamed on selves. The increasing value of a breaching method as a scientific value relative to the most sacred questions asked to every soul, Black pupils. When we hear about the laws that were against black and white, we know we wanted nothing to do with that. Our species volume. See, this breaching method set such up and sustained it internationally to keep the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, as they are actually being demonstrated, blamed on other things, others, ourselves, while it's keeping descriptions of all instances, collusion/S. For example, with the relativity of what came first. One of the things all the countries that are fighting with each other have collusions with. So Judge Napolitano has sources, and the courts have roles with some of the police forms are doctors of psychiatry and intelligence that works with drugs, foreign and domestic military. They've been planting on and off campuses live progressions, cover-ups where this breaching method effectively used and uses undiscerned from the most sophisticated, like former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and people with Washington, D.C. involved with predicate acts methods, with WFSB, with names next to their building, on off Fox Connecticut News. On a mass scale, they already changed what people said to conspiracy theories, Black Pupil. And they did this because they're a certain type of victim / hyper victim, as names A through Z, wherein how there's a function that has nothing to do with all it increasingly has to do with anyway. Where all that was taken to collusion with use of location / S, where use of difference / S is the worst. On off, I believe I put a link to it. If I didn't put a link to it, Tucker Carlson was in a video with what's his name? A guy, Alex Jones, who has syntax and communications regarding Sandy Hook kids and campuses. No, these are also people with Democratic themed and Republic themed, where and how our foreign and domestic military police at shipping locations and increasingly on off the Connecticut corrections offices are people involved with wire crimes, or whether wire crime methods, or whether it's police attaching little kids to fake conversations with themselves. And then as adults, they forge and switch names. There are other police forms involved with them, forensics locations, all employments. They had time collusions at the locations and with the names, with all the things associated. Whiting forensics in Connecticut has roles with state police, increasingly being reported, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Roles with the intelligence community, foreign, domestic, as collusions, consciously with uses of pretending passions and emotions, for example, where overtly / insidiously Black pupils, all formal voices, convictions by the law for America's name. They stay overtly / insidiously, simultaneously through that way, 3 ways. Criminally foreign influence. That / is the active part. The sceren. So we make little rap guy and friends cartoons are to train humanity to make convictions by what is constant and variable relative to what is hyperrelativity. That comes discernment that comes with, for example, how nature's identity shows us that it uses how these are volume. This is a singular volume, while it is plural volumes. Individual, grouped, and species body individual. Humanity is one species body of volume. That body as an individual is a volume science distinct from being an individual of its individual of the many individuals of its individual body. And there are group differences. There's group difference / S. Again, we're going to be led by what is constant variable. And see, we're going to have lists and identities of relativity to the physics with programming. For example, some people would use the syntax collisions. I believe that is syntax that they teach across the board, where they teach how to create games. So little rap guy and friends are cartoons. Because one of the sources of George Napolitano asked, could I believe it's in the video. I put the link. It's not like I don't know. Forget, he didn't ask it, but he used the analogy of a mixed martial artist. Little rap guy is one of the sciences share an identity, first of all. Boxing, martial arts, and wrestling, they share an identity grouped. And martial arts, some ways, was best to represent them, where they serve a function for each individual, again, of the species body of volume. And see, we make left to right. The species volume is right to left. It is completely the hypernative system unabridged. We could stay abridged constitution natures and pretending other as the breaching method employed regarding the nature of debate, for example. It is, again, overtly / insidiously, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. And how they got away with this, I can help you discern. Well, all you have to understand is the difference between our founders, our founder / S. Somewhere, and know how also people learn things through notes, distinctly from how through textbooks. And then if you lose a textbook or it's stolen, know how they have all these things buried because they have all these convictions. And they have not just legitimate theory, they're also tactically delusions wrought. Criminally foreign influence, factor, nature, quality aspects in nature. I'm not a doctor. The doctors have been roles with all formal identities of law, with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes since founding. People on the state of Connecticut corrections offices has roles with names next to Trinity College and next to Central Connecticut State University, who have rules with predicate acts with facts on off and whole methods of that. Fake motivations planting with a whole bunch of different countries. And they only know to an extent. And the difference of motivations with narratives. See, there's a hyper extraterritorial. For example, per science, beginning with discernment, to begin to discern it, we're going to see the names that were involved with sickly, distinctly north and south, all these distinct colonies. See, they have words like colonization. Reportedly, I believe it was on MSNBC, CNN, or Fox News, like where they're directing formal identities of the law to go after uses of words. So they have descriptions. Sandy Hook has roles with foreign and domestic medical families, before I was born, during my lifetime, and since. Right now, actively, they have rules of wire crime acts and methods, criminally foreign influence uses of databases at other locations, and at those locations increasingly relative to it. This is right where and how this breaching method employed. Whole bunch of victims / hyper victims employed, them blaming other things, others themselves for things that are the breaching method. The breaching method itself, again, caused slavery. It was the value of what caused people to leave witch trials for us to describe as a simultaneous piece of evidence / S, where revelations come from where and how we will make not convictions by anything that is not true always, its way, and not variable its way. Yin Yang and Alpha and Omega were revealed to teach this together. It's more probable and demonstrable. But see, the quality of debate is staged collusions with wire crime acts and methods that keep the defenses of pretended integrity to the formal identities of the law. The same way relative, for example, to where and how there is insanity that is preventing and has prevented legitimate scientific discernment of the subject and proper description of it at the beginning of the Old Testament and at the beginning of the Quran, for example, to keep maintained defenses of it out of sequence, defenses of names, uses, because this breaching method uses identity, how it works, the way nature is assigned it to work. It assigned us to discern. There were a whole bunch of different laws individually grouped in together for and design as a torture method, singular, as a extortion method, singular, as a slavery method, singular, the same one. And it made a whole bunch of roles with it. And that those were sustained. And then our founders were born. See, people keep blaming, this is what the summaries of history contain natures of debate that make convictions. And that is nature as criminal insidiousness against our founding father, James Madison, for example. How they get away with this is where and how constantly investigators and overt criminal investigators themselves in their campuses, in the difference of everyone around everyone. This is a method that perfected itself as a hyper sophistication here, which is discernible with the hyper evidential that we could use. For example, next to Fox Connecticut News, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. He has roles with a whole bunch of names from Wethersfield who grew up and went into interbranch and intelligence as families too. They're extended family members. These are courts and people on off the state judicial branch offices used remotely since they were kids. And it's still being used remotely. They don't understand how their volume is being used and the names next to their location. The names next to the state, all kinds of natures of conjunctions to the state judicial branch offices are relative to where and to how we are our value progression. And increasingly since founding, all investigators are used remotely, shown needs to hide at the same time their campuses, roles with predicate acts with facts, at database locations, and then further where sciences are manifest as further and further hyper additional collusions, pretended for other things, increasingly self-valued, real excuses and motivations, narratives, natures apparent because they were propagated, self-cultivated by the breaching method. And this is a part with revelations that come from where and how we could discern Black pupils, other things, other ourselves, being and having been blamed for what our founders communicated for us to blame on the breaching method. So we know that they get away with this and how they get away with it. But our what we all agree about is lied about. How they get away with that, they already did that. And then the breaching method shows them that. For example, that's one of the things that shows where it keeps them actively motivated to stay criminally foreign influence, simultaneously tactically / hyper-tactically delusions raw. Fact, human nature, quality aspects, nature, with uses of other people's names, with uses of convictions. Then it shows the peak identities of law, convictions, formal and other, at all locations, areas, and states, individually grouped and together as styles and natures of logic that can't defend themselves and afford to be, let alone to retract. Someone using convictions in short words, relative to what is constant and what is variable, that nature itself shows us. Distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, what a verbal is and what a gerund is. These are two hyperadditional names for a verb. They're also two hyperadditional names for a participle and the participle natures. Their complete identity requires use of the difference between the hyperinvisible but the still discernible. For example, the identity of forever nature that is 5 distinct identities of sequence/simultaneous nature. For example, as is manifest, so the value of, I'm not saying you could discern a cell nucleus looking through a microscope. You could discern a general pattern unobstructed and a distinct identity of relationship to itself. The cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall /S, an appreciation of gases and their mixture, positive or negative, to the identity value progression. In the water and its elements. And this is its identity as every other one. Well, not, but anyway. And this is where and how it communicates with difference. We have the same color eyes. We have different color eyes at the same time. The other species bodies have these quality aspects of nature. Like there's an identity of relativity. The nature of debate is also evidence /S. And they can be used to discern that there's a distinct, to appreciate the signs of the hyper simultaneous. For example, there is a distinct identity of simultaneous nature that is not the individual sequence and or simultaneous nature of any species body and or of any individual of it. Why and how? Each different species has the same quality aspects in nature, distinctly but non-distinctly. And then every species has this. See, nature shows us too, if we don't use its system to describe things or the value of that, in other words, debate about God, where we have the definitions still used as collusions with all location uses, singular by the breaching method. All the plural uses. Now these are this before suits and ties and counters to that. There are already collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private one, and a hyper one. There are proofs that consciously it made all groupings of humanity. When people say, oh, but they're wealthy. All they're doing is making conspiracy theories. No. On off Tucker Carlson's campus, there are people on my street that had conversations with people named Cololo, who are involved with one of the ones further with Sandy Hook and with Alex Jones with media locations. There's a prison in Sandy Hook who have crimes on off body dumping spots that are fact-cheating nature oriented, and with people involved with writing forensics through time, who have roles with names involved with home break-ins, etc. Because of the relativity of how investigators, indifference is already being and having been used remotely. WFSP has roles with foreign and domestic military next to the state capitol, next to their spots in Rocky Hill, who are roles with psychiatry, with names next to businesses and houses next to Hartford Hospital, who are families through time who have roles with names next to the campus's intercities, who are also Black themed, KKK themed, and roles with uses remotely of where and how nature are employed, each named to be unity with the other countries and to simultaneously be independent from them. Tactically ulterior from how they could appreciate that formally discern, let alone so therefore increasingly informal. They can't face us Black pupils with convictions proper. Yeah, they speak of population and they're backing a computer guy or individuals, and they're leaving because this is the way the agencies are. This is the way people. Therefore, they the formal identities of law, statutes and precedents left criminally foreign influenced, self-value, or that body is sensed and through our own. See, but the motivations, narratives, natures can't defend themselves and afford to have discerned. What is it right there to discern? The existence of the extraterritorial and the hyper-extraterritorial / hyper-extraterritorial simultaneously. People are making conspiracy theories about motives while tactically delusions raw regarding when they defend the identities of their agencies who pretend, for example, in backgrounds, oh, it's because it's Israel. Okay, Israel is always right. Per them. These are Fox News sources, MSNBC sources, CNN. CNN and Fox News have sources involved with the buildings next to the state capitol of Connecticut and next to the news locations. Fox News, WFSB in Rocky Hill, Fox News in downtown Hartford. Associated also with predicate acts with judges and prosecutors personally and professionally. All sides in criminal and civil cases are used to lock things and people hurt and or helped insidiously to keep collusions with the criminally foreign influence, criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments. Because every identity has relativity to positive and negative simultaneously, / hyper simultaneously. And we shouldn't even have to argue about this and keep arguing it because, in other words, it's inseparable from all our fact treatments. It's all right for them to theorize what slavery was about, but get out of the way when we start using Black pupils because we're using the hyper evidential. We're using what's true always, not denying the slave's fact, not forcing or adding, exception nature used criminally foreign influence. We have the same color eyes, we have different color eyes at the same time. We have means to discern all the roles with the computers, all sides of difference treatments, all formal identities of law. You guys left out the database method exploited at other location /S. And all that's sustained to hide behind all the hyper additional motivations, natures, needs, interests, names at location /S. Also hyper additionally named. Tactical ulterior from the system that has us. Its voicings or not. Everything is demonstrated. The special difference comes with Earth's value, comes as your own. And we're not, it's any way for how its identity is making more forever nature and positive or negative to and as itself, but as its systems use of the difference between positive or negative. It's not a nature of debate that makes examples of what's positive or negative, leaving out how this preaching method employed needs to have all natures of positive treatment syntactically. used to keep blamed on other things, others, ourselves. What they're leaving out too, increasingly with a bunch of victims slash hyper victims, only allowed to be manifest at courts, at locations A through Z, everywhere the human body is. See suits and ties encounters, and exceptions as collusions. With their works and with their words and with their worth. And when they speak of worth, Black pupils, see New York City. See how the suburbs were designed before our founders were born to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. While more and more the only means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures were to take part with criminally for tactically slash hyper tactically, criminally foreign influenced ones. So I shouldn't have to be, there's no, when they use all word uses of words like stability, tactically delusions, raw, criminally foreign influence too. We could have forgiveness and show how A through Z, all formal names, and informal names have collusions. See, these are campuses that are measuring and maintaining from off campuses self-value uses of the theater slash hyper theater projected as the value of the names of the agency's family members, for example, the names of the difference of kids, adults, for example. They are and have been tactical delusions wrought with this. The breaching uses of words like tactics and strategy, how they get slash keep getting away with it. There's also interstates because it is foreign to manifest. All sides, in other words, they're still speaking about, they're still blaming on other things, other themselves, the real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures in our cities, let alone New York City. Hyper additional. And then we try to do, in other words, we're going to do things better than free, and we could do way better and alleviate our needs to do it have people do it formally. See, no one's watching how it backed self-value roles with uses of identities, including the names of the sciences. This is exactly why, at the beginning of the Old Testament, for example, per science, this is the science of pantheism that modern religions are demonstrating to us, became criminally foreign influenced in defense of itself, or what? It became a criminally it became abridged nature, incapable of defending its name's uses of its name and systems. And system, because it's now a systems tactical ulterior from nature's use, employment again of names A through Z, everywhere the species body is. So the January 6th and treatments of it is relative to where and to how interstates all formal identities of law, retired and standing. And the difference of that too is effectively used remotely, criminally foreign influence slash hyper criminally foreign influence, Black pupils. This is not debatable. How such could got pretended is debatable. It's to prevent us from putting together short words properly with convictions. And there are three natures of short words that are inseparable. In other words, where and how we can be led by the hyper invisible but still discernible. Because any extent we could discern of it has three identities of 1/3. So it has the hyper 1/3/5 identities of hyperpossession over it. Even the parts of it do. The smallest finite detail of yourself has what is more finite than it, has what is greater than it, and has what is the order of the finite. With two identities, a sequence / simultaneous nature before this. See, when the nature of debate regarding American history, there are self-valued roles with keeping screened what came first. For example, it is most probable that our founders allied with Native Americans. And note the word lie in ally. See, again, don't forget, the pantheism, for example, that Little Rap Guy and friends present. This is science / hyperscience. Slavery came with the assignment of black and white to mean what it doesn't. It came with obligations by KKK themed, black themed, and Confederate flag themed intelligence. That means not just the three branches of government, everyone associated with them. That means not just the intelligence. Like, for example, on off the state of Connecticut corrections offices at a town line, Hartford, Connecticut, and Wethersfield, Connecticut. There are names involved with that who are also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Still rolls with criminally foreign influence uses of tellings of American history and of the 13 colonies as collusions, collusion / S, with where and how and why our founders had to leave entrenched the torture method against themselves, the extortion method against themselves, and the slavery method against themselves, which had also not been relinquished since semi-ancient times. And our republic came from before this, but it had already been re-engineered and then described. So we have evidential treatments that contain styles of debate and or natures of debate, and the difference of that is being and haven't been used at all election locations. These are also often schools, religious locations. The right to religious rights is increasingly forbid under the guise of people pretending to be against. A whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital have drugs and medicines crimes with names on my street since I was a kid from other areas tied to the house / S, involved with wire crimes with the Wethersfield police, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, unions, and retired police chiefs. And then they keep people at the same time with overt criminal enterprise, even more with the principal child abuser I caught them with, hyper evidentially recorded. They've been pretending fake recorded things. And with journalists have the right to lie, and they have obligations not to lie at the same time. The difference is being exploited because this is about the and the relativity of it, with also the Cartesian coordinate system and the value of it, for example, was also consciously exploited by where they speak about the nature of wealth. It is still to measure and maintain, to sense for the breaching method, criminally foreign influence uses of human fact, treatment, nature, collusions with all nature of formal and or informal law, and the difference of that is also used, like pupils. So what they're doing is forcing, that. In other words, even Sandy Hook has crimes with their patients and criminals in body dumping spots before they had the things. Albany Avenue and Fox Connecticut News. The news places are directed to make people attack them, or for them to call it an attack as sequence shifts self-value roles. Like, for example, Fox News As collusion with WFSB, they attached me to fake conversations with WFSB. I know these are also people at the locations next to Fox News, next to WFSB, who have roles with identity theft, natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, pretended to be legitimate intelligence. But it was also timed collusions with all these different countries and uses of difference on and off each of the campuses I went to who have collusions with those names. There was a Harris family, I don't know, that was involved with trying to make fake exceptions when I was in kindergarten, with Ray Reynolds and the Harris family involved with medical families, foreign and domestic interstates. These are people with Texas involved with the difference of Democrats and Republicans who are involved with people with the name Keene and people with this, and the Democrats like with this Alex Jones and people on off the state judicial branch offices and their neighbors like one with the name Fienza and on off Two Rod Highway where it runs into Hang Dog Lane in the Burlington Turnpike and Route 3 and where it runs into Hang Dog Lane and it's conjunction to the Burlington Turnpike, which turns Weathersfield into Newington, and Route 3, which turns Weathersfield into Rocky Hill. It's where the sign is, Ye Old Town. So our founders communicated for us to communicate, and our founder slash us. And our founder is James Madison. And you have to understand the counter extortion that George Washington agreed to. But you guys are not allowing us to speak honestly about George Washington, how he was tortured, extorted, and enslaved. How already had been sustained roles with things and natures of laws, uses of natural differences, tactical terror from how nature uses them. This has been left out. So in other words, no one could speak for James Madison. They can't speak for what came after him. They can't afford to have discerned what came before him because nature will show us these answers. So Monroe had to make the Monroe Doctrine, had to make a policy note and use the name of Americans and of Native Americans. So there are proofs that a portion of the Native Americans, they knew that, like our founders, there are 3 volumes of our founders. The Native Americans, which only enabled the plan of James Madison to be one way, which generates more ways and did generate them. But you guys won't allow appreciation of the Constitution unabridged or a nature of debate capable of getting it that way, let alone of defending it under the guises of security, under the guises of legitimate descriptions of others. People have been planting evidences at the end of investigations, investigators. Mayors are used remotely, people associated with them, involved on off parks, on off the Weathersfield at Board of Education. Further, with many I caught involved with the principal child offender. And there are further upskirt pictures on Twitter. These are the value of the intelligence sources, of the best judges, of the best investigators. There is an Inspector Mike, don't give the whole name, as one of the ones with fire departments in West Hartford, and Weathersfield, increasingly leaking how they are rolled on off. A whole bunch of names on off Hartford Hospital's Institute of Living have been planting evidences from there, attaching kids and their families to fake uses of drugs too. Fake conversations, fake mental diagnosis, too, while they're tactically delusions raw. They're putting fake conversations too with people at the same time for how they get away with it. All kinds of time treatments that are criminally foreign influence. So again, the participle is about time. And if we appreciate time properly, we would have that the ancients revealed, revealing also how it is a hyper additional nature. And the languages come, there's equally increasing volume is the value of their difference. And they were led by that and aware of this. Before humanity's names were forced, tricked, and persuaded to use those names, tactical ulterior from how nature employed them. And they would have never wanted this. The breaching method forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded them, not even fathoming that that was its goal. And so increasingly, modern names had needs in nature, obligations to allow people to make convictions and not be qualities of fact of nature, pretending they can't understand as intelligence, that it could be plausible because it's recorded conclusively true on off all formal database locations. And then further into sciences, a certain type of victim / hyper victim, if you refer to them as that, it can be used for hyper evidential to demonstrate that they want and need to keep blame the other things, others, ourselves, the real causes of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and nature. So each of the campuses I went to is not personal against me. And where it is personal differences, they're making instances that can be used by and were already used by the breaching method to keep used remotely. People speaking for the law, that, in other words, speaking for the identity of America with their convictions, speaking for the motivations of others, or the emotions. Emotions serve a function to discern is the smallest finite detail left out, is the value of anything simultaneous left out. Are we following its system? Should we let that go? If you cared about Native American rights, you would have shown it's the Constitution unabridged. And there hasn't been that one court for people like that. There hasn't, because there hasn't been one police form and the difference of it. It's fact, true nature wise. Conviction, where we are, conviction nature. So you guys, in other words, let alone theory and speculation. And then you guys want to make opinions when people want to use mandated law properly. A lot of people in prisons in New York City that are a lot other than they're described on television. And the difference of that, or why or how that is why, true, is to hide the rules of predicate acts with facts too. You have predicate acts with facts with people speaking about crime and punishment, accountability. Judge Napolitano has a source speaking about accountability. So Hartford, Connecticut, at the state corrections offices, increasingly they have roles with people from all sides with the World Trade Center attack, who had roles with the first campus I went to in Wethersfield. It closed after the first year I was there. And the houses next to it involved with the DeMorrow and other houses next to it have roles with probate court judges and foreign and domestic medical families. People I never had classes with who stuck fake things in databases to pretend made fake exception, including with their conversations with leaders of the kids and their kids. So then they make things up and leave things out and or repeat them, where also the difference between the integrity that's never been of any identity where they make instances treatments. That's why you don't leave out what came first, because little kids have means to discern how sickly distinctly the American Indians were the victim of what sickly distinctly the colonists were, and how sickly distinctly we were since we were born. Every year, there are less worms in the soil. Every year, the birds have to eat other things, and then they're going to go away. And then it's too late. Negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Its system, how to answer our questions, that has changed. And that is self-value rules with that. So, right, you want to self-value economic positions and nature debate, but not if you're in the way of mandated law proper. Because this breaks the thought of types of experts who spoke for logic, who spoke for names, who spoke for their own difference and differences of others. Increasingly, as relativity, for example, to the story of Cain and Abel, for example, this preaching method knew they wouldn't be able to discern that. It knew because they knew they wouldn't be able to discern the part about science before that, which says it's the only part, not that part, not the part about Cain and Abel. It says the part before that is the only part that we have to know and defend. It's where the names of the people of the sciences will come together. See, this preaching method showed we're supposed to get the Constitution on the bridge and religious rights. These are people that where they rely on all the time. Oh, these are people because they have drugs. They have problems with drugs, alcohol. They're pretending people have problems with drugs and alcohol. All exceptions, they're trying to film fake uses of it. In other words, I took like one sip of beer when I was in 8th grade. That party had people involved with the World Trade Center attack. And they were trying to make it paint me to fake ties to a Joe DeMauro off campus. I never saw him on my grammar school campus except for one day, one time. Never had anything to do with him. He's increasingly involved with mayors who were putting fake things with people from other classrooms. And O'Brien family further with the ones with Sandy Hook, Newtown, involved with the principal child abuser in Wethersfield. And they were more involved with police chief Cintron and other one years ago, with intimate ties and family members of theirs, involved with foreign and domestic doctors, a whole bunch of people. They use crime methods of pretending that people are saying everyone's bad, to pretend that we had conversations, and to hide how they did that. They've been planting rolls with military next to the state capitol, involved with the spots next to the WFSB, increasingly playing games with digital offenders. Twitter has more upskirt pictures with people involved with the child abuser that forced him. And there are more people with other natures of organized crime involved with the campuses and fake passions and emotions. There are people with the name, there's tied to a Luigi Guerrero involved with the World Trade Center attack. I never had a conversation with him. They tried to make a fake exception of me knowing him, with a Jonathan Mayano and a Paul Zano, who has federal evidence as crimes, federal rules of evidence as crime methods roles, with Wethersfield Police, Rocky Hill Police families through time, Newington Police forms families through time, location /S used criminally foreign influence. Increasingly, he confessed, recorded, demonstrated, confirmed with others that had conversations with gym coaches, and who was also like a football coach and basketball coach was involved, wrestling coaches. Fake ties, the natures of ties to be people. Fake exceptions are planted. These are people involved with criminally foreign influence uses of how programming works and how databases are relativity with things at location /S with instances, descriptions, names, descriptions, values, descriptions. The nature of debate has been measured and maintained through our own for the breaching method to keep itself discerned, because nature already demonstrates increasing ways. A singular breaching method was a scientific value and is a scientific value. to the description of any modern history properly. But the appreciation of that, just as appreciation of Black people's whites and all that it communicates for nature, shows us when these colors, when these things and motivations for why they speak such. There are collusions at the campuses. Central Connecticut State University, Trinity College, has people named who has people rolled with switching and forging names, and wire crimes and falsified police reports through time with Wethersfield Police. They have roles with state police. It's nothing personal against them. See, this is where this is a breaching method that has them as victims / hyper victims, speaking, having spoken other, for what nature convicts relative to these answers it gives us, having us have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time, so we can discern the hyper invisible but still discernible. There are more names than one for the verb, so we can appreciate the 1/3/5 ways where the 3 and 5 ways grouped one identity is, and then further as itself a semi-nature. Identity of relativity, that system which is discernible. If we appreciate how it is, what is constant and what is variable. And the quality of diffusion, hyper additionally, a third, hyper invisible but still discernible way. It is functioned this way. Before there was Boolean logic, before there was a book that Hitler wrote, reportedly named Adolf Hitler reportedly wrote a book called Mein Kampf, which was reportedly translated as My Game. There are proofs that there was an ancient game for the species body awareness, My Game. So they're trying to re-engineer, but not as the people doing it. The people doing it are trying to do damage control. This is how it effectively kept itself part of how to answer. And the revelations come too. You know, it shows us where other things, where we know, we can know this way. Other things, others ourselves, was communicated for Black and white under the guise of science, under the guise of peace, and or under the guise of peace only as peace, and I've got under the guise of, you know, roles with things like slavery only as slavery, extortion, torture. We're supposed to treat syntactically the torture of George Washington, not leaving out how James Madison enabled him to effect the counter extortion of the rest of the founders, while not trying to extort Native Americans, but to be led by, not just a representative of them. There are proofs that we had Native Americans take part with the founding of America, even if it wasn't formally, which it is formally. That's one of the proofs, president/chief. The slavery method, new consciousness, it knows nature uses independence and unity, tactical ulterior from the styles with syntax regarding such. It is increasingly styles regarding the value of money and agreements, past, active, and all speculation, economic and other. That difference is used to measure and maintain collusion with uses of name /s, tactically, criminally, timing, fake motivations planting. Increasingly, at each age of fact-cheating nature, increasingly the difference between overt criminal enterprises, private ones, people who work at campuses, all ages and natures. Hartford Hospital has rules with fire campuses with Russians who are also involved with the campus of, in the spots next to the campus of Tucker Carlson, who are involved with Alex Jones and people who work for the Republicans and the Democrats, who have collusions with a whole bunch of different countries, individually grouped in together, when they make convictions and opinions regarding their roles with not even realized though, because there's a Darth Vader. He uses the name Darth Vader, who's one of the police forms that Connecticut news locations also recorded with their journalists planting evidences, wire crimes with WTNH, email crimes, WFSB, fake conversations with me and others about the World Trade Center. I was in the Ninth Circuit Court right next to the World Trade Center right before the attack in Manhattan. Then I came back to Connecticut and found out about it on the news. And I noticed people in that attack involved with it. And since, but I had reported that stuff, but they hid that by pretending I had uses of drugs. And they ran with tactical delusions and by attaching me to fake conversations with doctors. I did ask a doctor and one woman before she became a doctor to help get the mandated law followed, because courts, judges, and prosecutors and their family members and their intimate ties were affected to confessions to me and to request help from me. Per people tied with location /s that have also been associated with similar in the past in West Hartford, with names from Wethersfield involved with New Britain locations and Cromwell locations, intercities, Connecticut, involved with the intelligence community used criminally for an influence since before our founders were born. Differences uses. It uses it to measure and maintain roles with its screened, otherwise, in other words, there are economic agreements with countries that have roles with natures of industries, where there are safeguards, all the ways they could and only are capable of hurting people and pretending others simultaneously for the breaching method. As collusion at the borders, the value syntactically most, all exception nature, are increasingly being projected to pretend other with. The reason most that the border is issued at countries that have the means to transverse the earth is because, but they're still designed by the breaching method before our founders were even born, is because of how and why cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall /s is manifest. This way, I tell it best, boxings. I teach us things. So, in other words, modern countries were weaned. They were raised needing food and thirsty, reliant upon systems that are tactically delusions wrought, /hypertactically delusions wrought, involved with the abuses of them since before they were born, sickly distinctly from everyone else. Not just to keep out sickly non-distinctly from being discerned, not just to keep out sickly non-distinctly from being countered, but to keep how all that and all that it causes is functional screen to a singular method by people who are going to make convictions formally and or informally. Therefore, increasingly at the same time. The difference of that is all sides in criminal and civil cases, and the names with the interbranch, and the names as the intelligence, like at prisons tied to the three branches of government's names, their own names, the names next to their houses, their family members, the corners of this people, the corners of the streets near their family members. All things used to hide lie progressions, where and how there are progressive uses of predicate acts with facts stacking into databases. So there are people who ran my kindergarten class who have rules with drugs. And not they didn't make me take drugs. I didn't I was tested to be reading at a 12th grade level. I went to my first preschool, whatever, when I was 3, about to turn 4. So I was, and there's a Harris family again, and I never had anything to do with them. They tried to make a picture to make it look like other one time after I graduated. Too, there's sequence shifts involved with them, with the timeline of people pretending to know me, and when they did, because if they ever addressed it on paper properly, it would show they have rules of war, crime acts and methods, and predicate acts with facts with other leaders of the kids too, as the ones I caught further involved timed uses of them, repeating fake things about me, as people that don't even know me. Then they do an annoying thing of pretending I'm using their names. They brought them up, including with the news, including writing forensics before I was born, when I was a little kid. And since they have crime rules at crime scenes with names next to body dumping spots, or also like what names next to the news media locations. In other words, security name next to. We never had security. Look at what designed the suburbs. Look what speaks. They have psychiatry databases. No one's allowed to speak about or medical information. They're using it as a right to lie to hide what's recorded actually, because they're putting whole fake transcripts, whole fake descriptions of behavior, just as if they were, and some of them actually are people who write scripts for Hollywood, people or whatever movie companies, and names are associated with Central Connecticut State University, interstates, internationally. For example, all the locations associated with the World Trade Center attack, syntax, push it, putting music with serious things like that, sickly distinctly, and used to measure, maintain, left out, how the breach method uses such. So you guys have the nature of debate, you guys already painted into corners, attaching people to fake uses of drugs, all and alcohol, all exception nature. You guys even trying to, Ray Clow tried to film me holding a cup with alcohol to pretend I had uses of alcohol with them, as he was trying to frame me for drugs with people from Hartford Hospital who've been attaching kids to fake locations with their family members. Whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital has roles with this writing forensics too, with a Bob Chase, who brought up the name Phil Cololo, where he made confessions about a police report he was supposed to show me. He didn't. Phil Cololo was one of the ones involved with the FBI and various police departments involved with planting evidences on all sides of my house since I was a kid. They used the religious spots, names there, the sense and sensibilities of them. These are people that will court to confess, demonstrate, confirm. They have ties to Snoop Dogg at Trinity College. And with people that I don't even know, they tried to make a fake exception. I don't know what they told the person, Snoop. I don't even know the names of the people that were standing next to me. One of them was a Mike Kerr, and there's a Jerry Kerr that Officer Jerry Miller recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Also with Inspector Mike, but there are other Inspector Mikes. And these are people involved also with the Joshua Stryker, one with identity theft, fraud, slander, planting evidences with people on off the state corrections offices and on off the state judicial branch offices and shipping locations per themselves, per people associated with them who have been forging and switching names with the intelligence community and names with intelligence on off the World Trade Center, increasingly involved with this. Ray Reynolds is one of the ones increasingly involved with this too. They attach me to fake ties to him. They try to make a fake film me tied to him. I don't know them, and make confessions before that, where they're leaving out the foreign bodies involved with those kids, putting fake things in databases, including how they have mayors and extended family members of mayors, and then timed uses of that, the same ones. They've been so sick. These are people on off the Institute of Living has rules with the names like Mayano. I don't know if they're Mayano. Next to there's a house there near the Institute of Living involved with this Jonathan Mayano. He's got brothers and family members. He said he brought involved, but the FBI director too. FBI Director Luskin and these doctors that work at Hartford Hospital, ones with the name Leahy, attached me to whole fake conversations with them about this. These are people all along roads and routes like the Burl Turnpike and Route 3 who have been planting evidences tied to that. 3 spots at the end of the Burl Turnpike. They told a whole bunch of lies about me to a girl named Elizabeth at Trinity College with people at the end of the Burl Turnpike. Like with the golf course. I never had a conversation in my life. They try to take a picture next to me tied to people. These are increasingly people with the name O'Brien and Cololo involved with KKK themed people named foreign and domestic military. It's something to do with their roles with Kolvinskis too, with Koreans. And a Kolvinskis is with some German themed military police against their own too. They're against Hitler too. Wasn't Hitler who designed those psychiatry and all those torture methods and extortion methods that were also religious themed, where how they measure and maintain left out the value of religion. So they've been drugging. There are a whole bunch of people that have been drugging the kids of New York City on a mass scale after they already hurt their parents, having been faked integrity of education while pretending others simultaneously. The Republicans and Democrats are sick souls. They're sick bodies. They cannot afford to have mandated law followed. Already used for election crimes were words like attack to measure and maintain self-valued roles with sequence shifts. Approaches, in other words, they have remote uses of victims increasingly too, because of the natures of collusions with the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones that the courts families have and have had. And they're increasingly self-valuing, means it needs to get that away. To get away with that using phenomena associated with where we have a whole bunch of different countries, not just Koreans and people from Japan. There was a person from Japan involved, I don't know his name, nice kid, associated with a Mr. Barnett, involved with Central Connecticut State University's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with names on off the World Trade Center and the Ninth Circuit Court next to it, who have roles also on off New Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts with their family members planting evidences. These are also even people with Gail King. Gail King has roles with intelligence community, foreign and domestic, military, black, white theme, KKK theme, Confederate flag theme, speaking for diversity, used to measure and maintain. Counters as collusions per function/S by that, where and how the people of New York City and of New Britain are sickly, distinctly tortured by it, extorted by it, and enslaved by it. Increasingly, people associated with a Daryl Sullivan Also recorded, he confessed, demonstrated, confirmed he has roles with mayors through time involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. And federal evidence is crime, federal rules of evidence is crime with child offenders, increasingly on off the state corrections offices and on off the state judicial offices. These are military, recently people on my street involved with Connecticut boxing gyms with predicate acts with facts, wire crime acts and methods, falsified police reports, roles with people next to body dumping spots, people pretending that they know about murders wrongly, real or made up, even if they were directed to do that. It's unclear, and they're demonstrating that might be a till, like with John Scully and a guy who reportedly was murdered, and the murder of Billy Grosso, and news media reports on his death spot having been two different spots, and the Two Rod Highway increasingly has people involved with confessions regarding that, which is also increasingly their demonstrations and confessions of their roles at the other locations like there, with people next to the state judicial branch offices, also with predicate acts with facts, identity theft, fraud, slander, sequence shift planting. They planted post-dated documents from inside the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center right before the attack, as the names have been all sides of criminal and civil cases through time. Covington Street has investigators who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They use crime methods where they pretend to be recording things and have speaking about other people and things where they leave out what came first.